Dexter Reed, World of Matchups, coming to y'all live and direct Saturday morning, getting it in with my man Spencer the Wiz from Blue Milk Boy. Spencer, what is good, my man?
I'm good. I'm good. We talked about this before. My team isn't so good. I'm fine. I told you too last week. I said when they lose, you can't. You said you're going to come after me. I said I'm numb to the pain. So I am. I'm numb
No,
to the pain.
and this since I've known you now, the 2 years that I've known you, this has been like the third or fourth time where like I've jumped on this Raider bandwagon and you told me it wasn't going to happen, and every single time you tell me it doesn't happen, and
They've
like
been
so
bad my whole life. I ain't.
I'm
Nothing's going to change until they win. That's it.
I am done, and it sucks because I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. They're our home team here, and I like Derek Carr as a person,
That's the
but he
problem.
he I'm done flip flopping with him, and so this segment we're going to do our three takeaways from week two. I'm going to start with week number one. Segueing right into number one being that Derek Carr has to be the most overrated quarterback in the whole entire National Football League. The guy's got a great persona. He's a great team leader. He's a Christian. I love that about him. He's got great core values. He's a family guy, but he just never gets it done when you absolutely need to have him. He's an absolute ghost. And the thing about him is that his stats are going to be skewed because he's got all these fourth quarter comebacks that gasses people, but it's because he's always down in games. I don't think he's a winner. You said it last week that he should have gotten a 1 year prove it deal. I'm definitely on board with that. Mind you, it's not his fault that they lose a lot of these games, but he needs to take the reins and win these games. I heard Stephen A. Smith say it this week that like you're in the AFC West with dogs and you're a puppy. That's my number one
Yeah,
takeaway from week
it
two.
connects. It connects to what I said. Raiders fans are delusional. So this is what I see on Raiders Twitter. I mean, I'm obviously like I don't know, I haven't seen every Raiders tweet ever, but it just seems the general sentiment is like, oh, it's not Derek Carr's fault. It's not Chandler Jones's fault. Look at the tape. Look at the tape. It's like, okay. So every Raiders fan thinks it's nobody's fault, and yet here the Raiders are 0-2. Also, this team hasn't won a playoff game in 20 years. What
They're
are we
terrible.
talking about? What
Yeah,
are we
they're
talking?
terrible.
It's no one's fault. Everyone's playing great. If you
Yeah,
look at the tape, everybody's playing great. So it's no one's fault. It's like,
yeah.
no, dude, this team's 0-2, man. This team's
That
been bad my whole life. What are we doing?
that
What are
was
we
one of the
doing?
most egregious losses I saw
It's
in the
copium,
last
man.
10 years. So that's going to be my number one takeaway from week two. My number two takeaway from week two is it's Pickett time in Pittsburgh. Trubisky is a
Mm.
scrub. Okay. Like he was never good. I think that Mike Tomlin knows that it's Pickett time, but they're going to ease him in. They're going to massage him in. I'd be willing to take out a second mortgage and bet everything I have that after that bye week, it's small hands Pickett. Trubisky can't get the ball downfield. They're not scoring points. He's another one of these guys that says all the right things, and he's placed in a pretty good situation with weapons. But when push comes to shove, they just can't get it done. He's hardly throwing for 300, 200 yards every week. I mean, come on. The guy had a rushing touchdown, but his upside is capped. I think they brought the hometown quarterback in for a reason. They wanted to give Trubisky the benefit of the doubt and give him a shot, but I just don't see it, man. The eye test for me with Trubisky is not there. I know he did good with the Bears that 1 year, but Matt Castle did good with the Chiefs that 1 year, and Matt Castle is an absolute bum. You are what the eye test says you are, and it's time for Trubisky to go.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think they've been going on a little bit too long with it. I can't imagine in training camp that Kenny Pickett didn't put up some decent tape. I mean, in the preseason he surely did. So I can't I think that the organization is too. Hey, look, man, they've won championships in my lifetime. So how can we really like criticize the way that they run their team? But I think sometimes I let the semantics go a little bit too far, where they're like a locker room of like pure respect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trubisky's a veteran, but I think that the distinguishing factor is he's a veteran and he's a good guy. We can both agree, right? Like
Yeah,
you said, he says the right things, but it's not like he's a veteran who's won playoff games or something like that. You know what I mean? They didn't bring in like Kirk Cousins. I don't even like Kirk Cousins that much, but you know what I mean. I feel like that's a little
yeah.
bit different. You got a guy who has proven himself on some level, and he's a veteran, and you think that maybe he's earned that right.
This is
I
the
don't think
perfect
Trubisky has
position for
earned
him
that
to
too
be
much.
in. No, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah,
what
this is the best team he's ever played for in his life.
he couldn't be on a better team right now unless you put him as the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean,
yeah.
they've got weapons, and I mean, he looked putrid on
Yeah.
every
They suck
single
a ton of
occasion this year. He's not been good. So that's my number two. My number three is fins up, man. You know, Miami Dolphins, that was
Hey.
an amazing game. And like, you know, a lot of people aren't. I'm one to come on and say when I was potentially wrong about something, I'm not willing to go all in onto it just yet. You know, but that was an amazing comeback. What I saw was just blown coverages. What I saw was an overrated Baltimore defense, leaving wide receivers wide open. But at the
Yeah.
same time, the numbers don't lie. And so I think the arrow is definitely pointing up on the Miami Dolphins. And I really like the arrow on Tua right now. I have to see more. But like all things in life, when you're wrong, you need to come on and say you were wrong. And I did pick them last week to win, but I didn't think that Tua had that kind of dog in him that I saw. 6 touchdowns is 6 touchdowns. He almost threw for 500 yards. I mean, Jesus
In
Christ.
regulation.
In regulation. I mean, you have to come on and you have to give this guy his flowers. And I still think Tua sucks. But boy, that was a huge step in the right direction for him shutting me up. And you know, that crow sandwich is getting a little closer to my table. So that's going to be my number three takeaway. I think the Dolphins make the playoffs. I think they have a humongous game that you and I will break down here in just a second. And anyhow they get this game, they're looking at the potential of going deep in the AFC.
That's interesting. I think the game was more about the Baltimore Ravens than it was the Dolphins, which is unfair on some level to the
Yeah.
Dolphins because they did put in the performance. They scored 28 points in the fourth quarter. But I mean, you can't be a playoff team or like a threatening playoff team and give up 28 points in a quarter no matter what. Like we talked about the
Disgraceful.
Raiders game, and that was like really bad, but that was 3 scores going into an entire second half of football. You're talking
Yeah.
about 28 points in just the fourth
In
quarter.
just the
That's
fourth quarter.
worse, man. That to
It's
me, that's worse. Yeah, it's
absolutely
egregious.
egregious. Cool.
So,
What are your three?
all right. So I talked about the Raiders fans being delusional. I think the second one, and we're going to talk about it too in the preview of the 49ers game, but I think it has to be said that Trey Lance ain't getting back in, dude. I
Trey
think
Lance is
that
done.
the start of next season, you think they're really going to let Jimmy G's going to take him to the playoffs because their team's good enough. They're going to probably make another decent postseason run. So that means when Trey Lance comes back, they're just going to let Jimmy Garoppolo walk and let Trey Lance step right back in. Maybe, but man, it hasn't looked great so far. I mean, Jimmy G comes in that first drive. It's a little bit of a mess. I think they punt, but then the actual next full drive that Jimmy G gets, it's a touchdown, man. I mean, the dichotomy here of Trey Lance struggling to score against the Seahawks and Jimmy G coming right back in and scoring against a bad Seahawks team. It's got to tell you at least one or two things. We'll see what happens this season, but when Jimmy G comes in, the team rallies behind him. That's their guy, and I
The
think it
locker room
always
wants Jimmy
was.
G. It always
That was
was.
one of the biggest office blunders ever, trading up to
Well,
get Trey Lance. When you go to the conference finals, that's not the conference championship. I'm thinking of the basketball. But when you
right.
go there and then you draft a quarterback, it just the correlations there. And you and I both agree that Jimmy G is not the greatest quarterback ever, but clearly he's good enough to be successful. He's
Yeah.
like the best version of Kirk Cousins. That's kind of how I see him. He's
Jimmy
a guy
G.
who isn't going to be the reason you win a Super Bowl, but
He's not going to
more
lose it.
likely than not going to be the reason you lose. Now, everyone, and I too, the first thing I think of is that missed pass he had in the Super Bowl where he had a wide open guy. So it feels like in that reason, maybe he's not like he's the reason you can't win a Super Bowl with them. But that's one pass versus a guy who has a really impressive resume, more impressive than Derek Carr, than Kirk Cousins. You can go down a long list of players actually he's accomplished a lot more than people consider to be better.
Well, Jimmy
So
G earned the contract in my mind. I think that this is what the Niners do. I mean, look how they treated Alex Smith and the Colin Kaepernick situation. I
yeah.
think that they know that they dodged a bullet here. I think they knew that they had a problem on their hands giving Trey Lance the job. That's why they kept Jimmy G at that 1 year
Oh yeah,
contract
no
to
trade
just hold
clause.
on to him, no trade clause. And so now that this guy's injured, the locker room gets what they want. Everybody wanted Jimmy G. The guy's handsome. He's the good face of a franchise. Then
Yeah,
you consider everything that he's had to go through this offseason with all this bullshit that the Niners
and he
have put
came
him
right
through.
back in and
He
won that
came
game.
right back in, and he's going to, I'm telling you, upgrade George Kittle, upgrade all Brandon Ayuk.
Yes.
I think they're going to smash Denver this weekend. I'm telling you, this was a dodged bullet by Kyle Shanahan in that front office, and Jimmy G deserve better, and I could not agree more. Trey Lance will never see the field again as long as Jimmy G is there and he is healthy. I completely agree.
I got one more takeaway. I talked about the Raiders, and I think to me, it's kind of obvious as of right now. Things happen obviously in the course of a football season, but if I'm looking at every team right now and the way they perform, the Bills are the best team in the league, and it's not very close. I don't think it's a two-headed race right now. I think when you go to the playoffs, obviously it's a one-game elimination, so the best team doesn't always technically win. I'm thinking back to that the Broncos Ravens playoff game where Peyton Manning had thrown like 57 touchdowns during the regular season. They lose to a hooky dookie play, but you know what I mean. As of right now, I don't think anybody can beat the Bills, and I think they might just continue to cruise through. They got a tough matchup, this week, so we'll see if that holds true still. But as of right now, I mean, the Bills are just killing everybody who they play. Didn't have Gabe Davis. Who cares? Doesn't matter. It's next guy up for them, dude. And Josh Allen, obviously, is probably the best pick for MVP next to Lamar Jackson, who's also having a crazy season, which I talked about last week, has another great game. So my Lamar Jackson pick still looks good, but final line is Bills dominant.
Yeah, and I love that we do the show because the receipts are all online. And I even said it last year on the show. The minute that they lost to Kansas City, I'm like, that's my Super Bowl favorite next year. That team is going to come back.
Angry.
They would have bludgeoned anyone left if they would have beat Kansas City last year. They would have won the Super Bowl last year, and they'd still be coming full blood this year. The one place that I would disagree with you is that there's a black cloud that's looming over Buffalo now since you were wearing diapers, and I don't care. You build them a new stadium. I don't care if Josh Allen is Jesus Christ with a football in his hand. I don't care. Until I see them do it in the lofts, to me, it's just smoke and mirrors. This is a team that continually goes to Kansas City and loses 4 straight Super Bowl losses. I've seen Josh Allen look like a clown on the field at times before. I know right now that he's the Hulk, but the regular season, sometimes you can peak too early, and then when you absolutely have to have it come together, fall apart because the pressure is on this team to produce now. And one thing I have not seen the Buffalo Bills do is beat the pressure. They're not just playing the team in front of them. They're playing themselves because they know if they screw up, it's going to be the same old story in Buffalo. Yet again, we had it all together and we fell apart like a house of cards. They are banking on Josh Allen to go scorched earth. Do I think he will? Yes, I do. I said it last year. I said it this year. They're my pick to win the Super Bowl. But do not be surprised if they're home or if they're on the road that a team like Kansas City goes in there and still finds a way to win. Micah Hyde is now out for the year. He's on IR. That is a humongous loss. They still don't have Ed Oliver. They're not 100%. Don't get gassed. Tennessee is trash. Tennessee is trash. So they're supposed to beat up on those teams. But when they get the real teams who can score with them in their building or on the road, I don't see them ever coming away with that W. Do you? So until I see it happen, I'm going to temper my expectations, but I do agree with you and think this is the year they get it done.
Yeah, we'll see.
Cool. Hot takes, 3 takeaways, Dexter World of Matchups, Spencer the Wiz, Blue Milk Boys. Tune in next week for 3 more from each of us. Let's go.